Today, I am super fortunate to have the fabulous writer and comedy horror expert, Zanandi Botes, with me, who I first got to chat with back in episode 12 and asked to come back to do this very special Halloween episode with me. Because you'll know, if you know me in real life, that I am quite the little squeamish scaredy cat when it comes to horror, even when comedy's injected. And it's something that I want to learn more about. So just in time for Halloween, Zanandi's going to come back and share 3 picks with me. I'm also going to share 3, and you'll also get follow-up episodes next week and the week after with 2 of the writers of works I've chosen. So that's going to be fun.
That's exciting. So exciting.
Dive in. Yeah, you start with one of your picks, Anandi.
Okay, cool. Yeah, first off, I love that you're so brave and you're so willing to want to learn more about the comedy horrors and stuff. And I think we've got such fabulous picks. I love your movies. I love that you enjoyed the stuff that I recommended. One is always so scared, especially if you're like I'm a big horror fan. So, but I mean, I also have lots of folks and friends and family members. It's always like, so Zanandi, I want to watch some horror, but then it's okay. I don't want to freak you out or anything. So getting the balance. So it's always interesting when someone for like this now asks you, okay, recommendations, because yeah, it's such a fine line and balance between the comedy and horror. So, but yeah, I think we've got some great picks. I think nothing too scary, too bumpy in the night and such. No. So yeah, cool. I'll start off with one that's actually a bit different. Trick or Treat, which is an anthology comedy horror from 2007. Starring fantastic actors like Anna Paquin is in there. The great Brian Cox is plays a grumpy old man as best and as only Brian Cox can. Trick or Treat. It follows 4 Halloween stories threaded together by Sam, our adorable little trick-or-treating burlap sack wearing demon child thingy. It's such a fun movie, and I think it falls, under the comedy horror, but it's very subtle. It's not like this laugh out loud comedy or the super scary horror. It's a very subtle of both, and it's so fun. And for an anthology, I think it's also so well done. Anthologies is really difficult to do, and I think they threaded it so well. The whole. It's all Halloween stuff happening in this little town of Warren Valley. We've got laced candy and scary school buses and my favorite horror subgenre, werewolves with a twist. So much fun. And again, it's those little subversive tricks that they pull that always works in both comedy and horror. You expect something and then bam, it catches you off guard. But yeah, instead of being scared, it's woo, okay, kind of almost giddy, almost makes you feel like a kid on Halloween getting candy. And I think it's such a brilliant Halloween movie. So I always recommend this one for people this time of year. Especially if they're not want to go full horror, no,
it was a perfect suggestion because it is perfect Halloween vibes, and I think it really helped my brain to have the puzzle of it, with the anthology. I've never seen an anthology horror before, so I really enjoyed that. Gave me a little bit of distance to be oh, how's it going to fit together? Oh, I saw that character. Oh, when are they going to the puzzle of it? It did make it feel like a game, and then so many other things that were really fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it because I think it's actually a very underrated movie. A lot of fans of the film, it's why did we never get a sequel? This is so good. Because I think it's got its own little lore, already set up within the universe, which I think is great. So that's my first recommendation.
It's good. And it really did keep me guessing, and I kept guessing wrong, which is always really fun. So I kept kind of guessing what was going to happen as we followed different characters, and then I would guess wrong. So yeah, very, very fun.
Love it.
And so I'm going to share my first one, Life After Beth, so a film from 2014. And I actually mentioned it when we last spoke because on the spot you were talking about werewolves and really loving werewolves, and you're like, what do you like? And I was like, my first thing that came to mind was zombies. And I really do seem to have quite a thing for zombies when it comes to comedy horror. I do. Don't ask me why. But in this particular one, Life After Beth, it's written and directed by Jeff Boehner, who, if the internet is correct, is actually Aubrey Plaza's husband. Aubrey Plaza stars in it, one of my absolute favorite female performers. And also Dane DeHaan is really wonderful playing opposite her as Zach. And what I really love about it is I'm okay with like shuffling zombie packs. I don't quite like feel like they're going to come and get me, but this isn't that. It's really, it starts anyway with a zombie in quite a domestic setting. So still very heightened, but also very domestic in that sense that we sort of see it from the boyfriend who's grieving. We see the parents who are grieving, and then she comes back. And I love that concept of what would you do if like you'd lost the sort of young love of your life and then they come back as a zombie? Or what would you do if it was your daughter and she comes back as a zombie? And just the extremes that that's taken to. So, making it sound very existential, it's also quite fun, but as a kind of interesting sort of poking away at grief and what we do when we're desperate and how we would respond, I find it super interesting. And for me, also, I watched it when it first came out back in 2014. And the things that stuck with me, the things I enjoyed when I rewatched it for our conversation. So I really clearly remember a lot of the physical comedy that Aubrey Plaza is absolutely brilliant at. She's brilliant
Yes.
at like disgust and
Yes.
frustration, and she's not like the cute ditzy one. She's just great at really going with that. So the scenes that I remember of him trying to woo her on the beach and play guitar, and her being disgusted by it, or her being like strapped to an oven to keep people safe, but then like still trying to fight it and get through the door. Those sort of visual images have really stuck with me. So for me, there, I love the sort of digging into grief, but in quite an extreme and humorous way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about another recommendation of yours that's also in kind of like that vibe. And I love
Yeah.
that. I think it's really, I mean, I'm always like hats off to people that can do that can take something that can actually be kind of, like really serious and,
Mm.
make us laugh and make us feel okay for laughing at it, because that kind of makes you feel like, isn't that the point,
Yeah.
like why else are we doing any of this,
Yeah.
I really love that. And just also what I want to say about Life of Beth, and it's like with Trick or Treats, it's the same thing. Like, when a story is really good, when you can actually explore. It's so cool that we see it from the boyfriend, like the angle from the
Mm.
boyfriend, but you could easily have done the movie from the parents' point of view. Like John
Yeah.
C. Reilly and Molly Shannon is
Mm.
hysterical. I love them in this movie,
Mm.
and I could easily have watched the same movie from just their, like, how they were coping, not coping, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just so fun, and that's also good writing. It's when you really have like strong characters, and you could actually do point of view from literally any one of them, and the story would probably still be so engaging, and
Mm.
there would still be enough to say about it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
a
glad
really
you
good way of putting
recommend
it.
it again, because I haven't watched it in a minute. So it was so fun watching it again for this. I'm really
Mm.
glad you recommended it. It's a good one. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. What's your next pick?
Okay, so for the next one, yeah, this one was the one that I was like, I wonder if it's going to be too scary, but yeah, it's so much fun. Behind the Mask, The
Mm.
Rise of Leslie Vernon, a 2006 American mockumentary. Yeah, it's a black comedy slasher that kind of looks at this guy. Nathan Basil plays Leslie Vernon, who is becoming a
Mm.
slasher killer. Yeah. So this documentary crew basically films him during his becoming, and he talks about like slasher conventions, and the whole thing pokes fun at that. For
Mm.
instance, like one of my favorite bits that I really love is when he's talking about how he needs to like be really serious about cardio, because
Mm.
you always see like the people running away, but the slasher slowly walking, and that is hard. That is like difficult to still. I love like this little like uh, um, joking about the stuff that we see in the movies, and how that would translate into real life, and also just the documentary crew, how they get sucked into it, and it's fabulous. I'm a big fan in general of found footage,
Mm.
like horror. I mean, I love. I grew up loving documentaries, and then I got to watch mockumentaries, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. This is a thing. I love it. And then
Mm.
found footage like happened, and I loved that as a sub genre in horror. So yeah, Behind the Mask is just it's some of my favorite things combined. And I think Nathan Basil is just amazing. He's got such a Jim Carrey vibe for me. He looks a bit like Jim Carrey. He's got a bit of the same energy going. Very interesting actor. And yeah, I think it's a very fun and clever, but not trying to be clever. Like it's not, yeah, like I don't want to say pretentious, but like you
Mm.
know what I'm trying to say. It's not trying to be overly clever or like it's just kind of feels effortless the way they did it. And again, props to Nathan Basil. He carries that movie. It's really something because that's not easy to do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Like I was totally transfixed by it and was both like really like I kept just sinking into it and getting drawn along with it
Yes.
because like you say it's so effortless, whereas sometimes actually when I watch different kinds of mockumentaries I'm pulled out quite a lot because it's so knowing and all the looks to the camera, and actually I find
Yes.
I sometimes that gets almost in the way of my viewing, or like you say it can almost be too clever, but this really did seem effortless and I was like, how am I like totally believing this? And
Yes.
also and
I
also it
love
is
it.
quite absurd following the logic, but they do a really
Exactly.
beautiful job of following the logic of it. And also like I was trying to, because I was so into it, I was like, at what point did they stop it? Did like it stop being a mockumentary and it actually like they must have
Right.
changed? Yeah, but it was such as like a, I'm not going to say anymore, but it's such a sleight of hand. Like I just kept
Exactly.
rolling along for it, really skillful, make it look so easy,
Exactly. And
but
you know
it's not.
what? You can also watch this movie over and over. It's highly rewatchable, even when you know what
Mm,
happens, because of that, because it's so
yeah.
effortless, because it sucks you in, because it does that every time you watch it. It really does. It's so well done. I mean, I think honestly, since Blair Witch, there's been a lot of the found footage stuff. There's been a lot of, like movies trying to emulate that. This was the closest movie for me that came to that. Well, this does feel real,
Mm,
like
yeah.
that really, like, yeah, it engages you so well. And yeah, it's just, oh, it's a fun movie. We can't really say much more about it because
Mm,
there's definitely some
yeah.
twists and turns and delicious
Yeah.
little nuggets that people need to like see for themselves and experience for themselves. But yeah, it's
100%.
it's a great one and definitely recommended.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you totally about Nathan Basil. I looked him up afterwards because I was like, what else has he done? Because he was just
Yeah.
so wonderful. And same for a lot of the cast. Again, we didn't have that thing in mockumentary where sometimes people are playing at different scales and you see almost like when someone comes on and the same kind of thing as when a really great performer comes, but they're doing like a little feature in a sitcom and actually their character pops more than the others. This was like was really well placed. So all the characters I really believed,
So
even though
good.
they're, yeah, really good. I won't say any more about that, but it was a really fun watch. And again, I hadn't watched any of your picks before, so this is quite the education. Thank you.
Cool, cool, cool.
Yes. So my second one, another zombie. Promise it's not a zombie for my third one, but the second one is another zombie. And this one is Warm Bodies. I first saw it as a film, and it was like long enough ago back in, I think it was 2013, where I actually hadn't read anything about it. I hadn't looked at the reviews online. It was one of those where I was like in the cinema, like in charge of picking the film, and just picked it and went in and really enjoyed it just for it being a fun concept. I knew nothing about it before I went in. So it is zombies, but again, it's very much relationship based. The film itself is kind of marketed now very much as like a zombie rom-com, and it is the like romantic relationship that's at the center of it. But as I always do, if there's a film where I think, oh, that's kind of interesting concept, I go and read the book. And it's based on Isaac Marion's book, Warm Bodies. And actually, in that, he's, yes, there is like a sensual relationship with main character Zombie R and how he's negotiating his new feelings, but it's also set in that wider context. In the book, he actually does, like very early on, have a zombie wife and adopt zombie kids, and it's
Oh
going through all the motions.
wow. No
Yes,
way. Oh my
it's
gosh.
quite a different framing and it has a very different ending. So if you're at all sort of
Ooh.
geeky like I am about adaptations, it's really worth going back and reading the
Yes.
book. I think it's darker. I would say I found the book both darker and
Okay.
funnier. So,
Okay,
particular,
fantastic. That's a great
yeah,
recommendation then, because I was
yeah.
wondering, should I? Like, I enjoyed the film,
Mm.
but yeah, I was like wondering, how does it compare with the book? So okay,
Yeah.
definitely checking out the book then.
Yeah. So I think things that are similar is that in the book, one of the reasons that I love it and a lot of the humor that works for me is it's very voicey. So it's written in first person and it is written from zombie R's point of view, and it does have this really deadpan humor, but lots of
Yes.
humor and things that we don't see in the film for all kinds of reasons. That's totally understandable for a film. They have to take a particular slant on it, but the book very much digs into those kind of existential things of what would it be like being a zombie, having a zombie wife, having zombie kids. So there's a scene, for example, that's in the book that doesn't make it into the film. That's one of the ones that I found both the sort of darkest and sweetest, where he has his like zombie kids in the back of the car that he's trying to get driving with his sort of new girlfriend in the front seat, and they're like trying to bite at her shoulder, and he's like, kids, don't bite at her. And so it's like, again, taking that like really domestic setting and
Yes.
putting kind of zombie vibes into it. And yeah, dealing with like what do you do when you're a zombie going through the motions and don't really have purpose, and so it's interesting. And Isaac Marion is one of the interviews that you'll hear, so he's actually going to be next week's show, so we'll get to hear about his writing process and what it was like for him creating the book. So yeah, things I picked up from it that I really love is voice, and clearly even though it's kind of comedy horror-ish, I seem to be obsessed by the relationship aspect more than getting chased or scared. I'm like, what
I
happens, yeah, with the
I love the
relationships.
point of view too. I really do. I love the first person. Like, it's probably one of my favorite zombie intros ever. So, I
Mm,
mean, and it sounds like you're saying the book is very much
yeah,
more
it's
of
that
that.
voice.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like, yeah, I would probably really like the book because I do love that. The ending is, the beginning, the opening, like whole sequence thing until basically, he meets the girl, like
Mm,
that. It's so funny, like just how they live and how they do things, and his head voice, and it's fantastic, and it's great comedy on this very macabre
yeah.
type of like theme and
And I feel like
idea, and
and the
love
book
that.
doesn't dodge things in the way that you have to think about for movies and viewers, particularly if you're going to market it as a kind of
Yeah,
zombie rom-com. Whereas the book doesn't dodge what happens if zombies are trying to have sex, what happens, actually would
cool.
happen with the dad. So actually, like it does follow the logic, and it's got a bit more scope to be both darker and funnier, I think.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Mm.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Great recommendation. We are having great fun here with our
Yeah.
fantastic recommendations. Okay, so last one from my side is yeah, um, sure. Like, so this movie, it's Death Becomes Her, that
Mm.
I had the privilege of seeing when I was a kid for the first time. And literally since then, like, I would beg my mom to rent it again for me from the video store, and again and again. I've watched this movie so many times, and I
Oh.
still do. Multiple times a year. It's literally like a comfort watch for me. I also think like any theater nerd would love this movie because I mean, Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn and the absolutely hilarious Bruce Willis. They're all so over the top and so dramatic in this film. And I mean, it's beautiful to watch. And yeah, it's this macabre, dark like comedy horror satire, where the horror is mostly more body horror type.
Mm.
You know, but oh, interesting thing also, like a little tidbit on the film. I once wrote an article for Cracked, also mentioning it. Is that it was actually they used groundbreaking CGI skin
Mm.
technology for the film. That technology went on to give us Jurassic Park and um, this is just a fantastic movie that I also think it's like when people always go, "What's your favorite Bruce Willis movie?" I'm like, "Death Becomes Her."
Yeah.
I think it's so fun and funny, and the acting is great, and the topic is evergreen. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's one that it probably gets overlooked a lot, because I don't think, people always think, like, it's, when they think comedy horror, they don't necessarily think about Death Becomes Her. But I mean, it's a comedy horror, and it's a good one. So, like, I definitely write it up there. I would definitely recommend it for anyone who just wants to have a fun time. And the wonderful Isabella Rossellini is in it as
Mm.
well. And that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't seen it and hadn't heard of it. I don't know how. And
Really?
yeah, no. So it was my
Oh.
first watched it with my husband. And I just couldn't believe how long ago it was made in terms of the special effects. And I am not someone, as we know, I'm apparently more just relationship obsessed, just all about the people. And I don't often, I feel like special effects budgets can be wasted on me. Other people will comment on them and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I guess that was pretty cool. But this, I was like, oh my goodness.
What?
Like,
Exactly.
yeah, when you, like you say, the body horror and like Meryl Streep's head spinning around backwards, and like the special or like Goldie Hawn with a hole in the middle of a body, the special effects are outrageous for when it was made. So I
Yeah,
was super impressed.
exactly.
And the cast, I was like, how did they get all that cast together? An
Mm,
outrageously good cast.
just
So fun.
wonderful.
And yeah, I wanted to ask you whether how you would feel if they said that they were going to do a remake of it, because the themes are so interesting in terms of like beauty and sort of women's relationships to their body. So interesting. Or would you be like, oh no, don't touch it, it's great as it is?
I actually, as a huge fan of the movie, I would actually be interested to see what, I mean, yeah, how many years later? Like, I think, yeah, different generations can have different takes on it. And that's what's always like interesting for me when it comes to remakes, is just to basically see how, different
Yeah.
generations think about the same topics. So yeah, I would be down for it. And especially because I think it will actually also just remind people, hey, the original one is great, watch it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like it'll be a win-win either way, I think, as a big fan of the first one. But
And
yeah, I think
do you know who you would cast?
oh gosh, Anne Hathaway, probably. Like,
Oh,
immediately I'm thinking, who
okay.
can
Yeah.
absolutely carry like something big like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
She
would,
would be
yeah,
fabulous.
right. I don't know who else. Who do you cast?
So recasting, I normally lazily try and put Aubrey Plaza or Jason Statham into everything. Doesn't matter what
Ah,
the role is, and
yes,
then
yeah.
and then I come back. But yeah, it would be interesting though to see what would be good for like the Bruce Willis character, because he is such a fun kind of clown in this film, but also still manages to be somewhat tragic and not too offensive. So he's very
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
I don't
Now
know. I'm trying to think like Chris Pratt,
I'm just seeing
Ryan
Jason
Gosling.
Statham now, and
Yeah,
because I mean, I also love him in everything. That would be
yeah.
so fun. I think that would be a different take
It
completely,
would.
but I mean,
Yeah,
he's
it would.
played the bumbling like guy in Spy, falling over
Mm,
his like European shoes all the time, and like I mean,
yeah,
he's got a little bit of a bumbling thing happening. I can see that.
yeah,
And like
yeah.
we nerded him up a bit, glasses and like
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
you
Just so it's
know.
not too much the tough guy. Yeah. Amazing. But it was a really, really fun watch. And again, don't know how I'd missed it. So you've
Nice.
pulled a gem
Ah, I'm
out of the
glad.
sands of time for me. Thank you.
That makes me
So
happy.
yeah, so my final pick, I picked
Mm,
Spontaneous.
yes.
Again, I watched it in a 2020 film, but again based on a book. So I did see film first, thought it was a super interesting concept. The kind of framing of it is human combustion, but obviously that is like a metaphor that can stand in for so many things. And it's based
Yes.
on the book by Aaron Starmer. And my interview with Aaron will go out in 2 weeks' time. So we get to hear about his take writing the book. And I really loved the book. I do love the film too. I think it's interesting, but and there's a lot that crosses over. So I think the thing that I
Okay.
liked most about the book, one of the things I love, several of the things I love, again, voice, same as Warm Bodies. I'm a sucker for really strong voice. And again, it is first person point of view, and we really get Mara's voice written in a way that's quite refreshing for like a female teen protagonist, in that it's not super cleaned up, but she's just so well rounded, and to me it felt really truthful in terms of her response to trauma, because we've got all the kids literally blowing up in the school, but also, you know, it doesn't take much for Stretch to imagine what other situations that might be like. So we get to hear her sort of very sarcastic, deadpan responses to trauma. And also, we get to see from a lot of the rest of the cast their takes on trauma too, in a really beautiful way. And at the heart of it, there is this really sort of sweet relationship love story that's emerging, but in a way that doesn't feel at all sappy. So really interesting too, in that Erin talked about Brian Duffield, who is the screenwriter and director, and he refers to the film as baby's first horror. So that's probably perfect for me. And apparently Brian said that, you know, if you can deal with the first couple of minutes of it and deal with the kind of level of blood and gore that's in the first couple of minutes, you're going to be good for the film. And that's also true for the books. It like literally starts with a bang, sort of no pun intended, but it does in that first chapter, but also in this very voicey way. But there's something about the way that the humor is written that made me kind of be able to still relax into it. And it's not like the menace of things getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Things do escalate, but again, if you can cope with the first chapter, cope with the first couple of minutes in terms of what it's dealing with, then you're good for the film. And there's actually a lot of sweetness in both the film and the book in terms of seeing those relationships, and a lot of humor and honesty, I think, in relation to how humans deal with trauma, and in their very different ways. So those were some of the things I loved about it.
So this was the first time that I watched Spontaneous. And I
Okay.
immediately wanted to like message you and like, oh my gosh, Danielle, I love this movie. But then I thought, no, I'll keep
Oh,
it. I'll
yeah.
keep it for our little
Keep it.
chat. Oh gosh. And I
Yeah.
mean, like, so yeah, like Brian Duffield directed. And I mean, I love his stuff. I love
Mm.
Underwater. I love Love and Monsters. I love No One Will Save You that just came out.
Mm.
It's my favorite horror movie of the year so far. So I'm so happy that, again, you recommended this one, that I could see it for the first time. Because what? Oh my gosh, like so much fun, first and foremost.
Mm.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
escalates and it gets real sad, and like it's got a lot of heart and it's got a lot of real stuff, and you feel for the characters, and fantastic characters. Like the
Mm.
two leads are just beautiful, and which makes you care about them, which makes you feel all the things. It works. But I mean, I laughed. I laughed so much from the beginning. Obviously, lesser by the end of it, but like I
Yeah.
laughed a lot in the beginning. That first funeral of the first girl that died,
Mm.
and we have the shot of her
Mm.
dad at the car, like looking at the decal stickers, stick figures, families, and starting to scratch off one of the kids. I had to pause to just stop laughing. That was so funny to me. Like, it's like you never think about, you know, those type of situations. And I like that. I like when a movie does that. It's when it makes fun of a thing that should I be laughing at this? But it's also
Mm.
like, wow, you've never thought about it like that, you know? It makes you think differently about even the silliest, smallest thing, like in such a serious situation where it's a funeral and grieving, and dad just lost his kid. But like, okay, what do I do with the sticker now on my car that says I've got
Yeah.
the kid? It's so like it's
Yeah.
very gallows humor, which I do enjoy, because again it allows you to laugh at the serious stuff and to think about it differently. And but yeah, I do love the concept, and I'm also definitely going to. I've got a lovely Christmas list of books
Mm.
that hubby can buy for me this year for Christmas. And yeah, Warm Bodies and Spontaneous are both on that list now. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So that'll be great. And you'll get to hear interviews with both
Yes.
Isaac and Erin. And yeah, as you say with those characters, um, I think it was Chris had who said right back in episode 1 of Comedy Masterclass that when you're writing and you're writing characters, that you really want to be like writing for a star, like you want to write the kind of thing where someone would really like want to bite your hand off to play it. And that's how I feel about the characters that Erin's created. And I think Catherine Langfield and Charlie Plummer, who play Mara and Dylan, are just so wonderful. And again, it's so nice. Like we talk a lot about tropes, and I think tropes can be so interesting in horror and comedy. It can be so fun to play with. And then we also, in our last discussion, we talked about some of the sort of portrayals of females that we'd like to see shaken up a little bit. And I think this is a case where Erin has done a wonderful job of creating a really strong, interesting female protagonist who's also super flawed in that she's superhuman, dealing with grief and literal horror. So wonderful job in the writing. And it's been such a lovely pleasure to get to speak with you today. Thank you so much for your picks. I really appreciate it. I really, really had fun watching them. And any final words from you, Zanandi, before we wrap up today?
Yeah, final thoughts. Oh, I just love comedy horror. So many more great titles that we can recommend. Werewolves Within, Jennifer's Body. It's just loads and loads. Yeah, I love that more people are talking about it because genre, like horror as a genre, has really grown. And I love that there's interest from people who aren't really into horror. That's like, but I do want to like kind of, get it. And there's so many fantastic movies that's not that scary, but that is really great, gives you fresh perspectives like on different characters, on different themes and different genres, like with sub genres within the genre. So yeah, I just like it's very exciting for me that people want to talk about like comedy horrors. And yeah, thanks for like having me on and having me share just my fan. I feel like such a fan, giddy fan, like, ooh, I love these horrors. But thanks.
Yeah. And where should people go to find out about you and your work?
Social media is probably still the best place. I'm
Mm.
still writing for Cracked, and I'm like doing a lot of comedy horror and
Mm.
other horror podcasts on movies, films, and flicks that people can check out. But yeah, I think like it's Zanandi on Twitter, and I'm on Blue Sky. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
Blue Sky. We'll see what next app comes next
Yeah.
for us all.
Yeah. I feel you on
If I
that one.
wasn't a writer, I wouldn't have cared. But
Yeah.
yeah, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for introducing me to 3 completely new movies. What a delight. I feel like I've had a proper Halloween education. And listeners, I hope at least there's some out of those that you might like to try and explore. You're probably all braver than me, but I think there's something in there for everyone. So thank you so much, Zanandi. You're awesome.
Oh, thanks, Danielle. Have a happy Halloween.
Oh, thank you. I shall.